The conflict between Israel and Palestine has spanned generations. Ashland University recently had the opportunity to get an inside look at the situation with this special guest to the campus. AUTV-20's Kayla Gowdy has the story.
Israeli riot police rush forward, firing rubber-coated steel bullets.
The president is reshaping U.S. policy toward Israel, and he's supremely confident he can accomplish what has eluded.
With a new U.S. administration settling into power in the White House, the all-important question of where the Israeli and Palestinian conflict falls on the agenda is now in play. I sat down with the Israeli Consul General to discuss this conflict and other recent developments.
Well, first, I just want to welcome you to Ashland University. I want to thank you so much for your visit and coming. How has your visit been so far?
It's a pleasure to be here. After I saw the picture of the illustrious figures that were here, I am very proud, even more proud that I thought I will be.
How did this trip get arranged? How did you wind up at Ashland?
Well, I am, since August 1st, the Consul General of Israel in a 5-state area that includes Ohio. And it was clear for me that I have to visit Cleveland to meet local leaders, Jewish community, business leaders, different communities, and I was very glad to receive an invitation by President Campos to Ashland. I heard a lot about Ashland. I know that my Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, visited at least twice Ashland, so it was for me a must-see visit.
Again, we were very, very happy to have you. So on December 23rd, 2016, the United Nations voted to make Israeli settlements in Palestinian territory illegal. What impact did this vote have on relations with not only Palestine, but the rest of the United Nations as well?
Well, it was a very unfortunate decision. First of all, we have to stress that resolution was possible because of the abstention of the United States. And it's very unfortunate that the United States, the previous administration, joined forces with the democratic beacons like Venezuela, for instance, that was one of the countries that presented that resolution in order to criticize Israel. That was very, very unfortunate. I don't think should be a source of pride for the American diplomacy. Also, look, it's an absurd resolution. For instance, a resolution that makes the most sacred places of Judaism, like, for instance, the Western Wall, call it Palestinian occupied territories. That shows you how absurd that resolution is. A resolution that does not make the United Nations more credible, much less credible than it was. You know, in the United Nations, if an Arab country today presents a resolution saying that the world is flat and Israel should be blamed for that, be sure that it will pass. I hope that in that case, at least, the United States will veto it.
I would hope so too. You did just mention the United States' abstention. So with the fact that we did abstain from that vote, and as a country that has generally always supported Israel, how did the abstention impact your view of American foreign policy towards Israel?
It was very, very disappointing. I think that it also harmed the American diplomacy, as I said, joining forces with despotic regimes that use any opportunity to smear Israel. I don't think that is added prestige to the American diplomacy.
And then due to their religious importance and also the quality of life benefits provided that these settlements provide, does Israel plan on honoring the resolution adopted, or what is the next step forward?
Well, actually, the resolution doesn't call for any active steps. We never accepted the notion that Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, should be free of Jews. You know that Israel has a 20% Arab population, and that those 20% Arabs that are Israeli citizens have complete equal rights. Just to name a few, the Deputy Commissioner of the Israeli Police is a Muslim Arab. We have 2 Supreme Court judges that are Arabs, and that's perfectly okay. So the notion that Jews shouldn't be allowed to reside in the ancient homeland of the Jews, regardless of any future political solution to the conflict, is outrageous. We do not accept that.
And then following the passage of the resolution, Donald Trump did tweet, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th. What are your thoughts towards American-Israeli relations for this administration? Have you seen any sort of change in the first 54 days of President Trump's
Well,
term?
Prime Minister Netanyahu visited Washington not long ago, a few weeks ago, and held talks with President Trump. We are in the process of conveying our positions to the American administration, to the new administration. The new American administration, the Trump administration, is in the process of conveying its positions to Israel. Yesterday, a senior official in the White House, Mr. Greenblatt, visited Jerusalem and convened with Prime Minister Netanyahu for 5 hours. I think we are in the process of formulating policies. No doubt that I would say the atmosphere is much better than it was in the last period. Being said that, I have to add that also with the Obama administration, we had a very intense strategic dialogue, a very intense intelligence cooperation. We do not underestimate that, and we are grateful for that.
So circling back towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, President Trump and President Abbas did recently meet in the East Wing to discuss the conflict, and afterwards President Trump released a statement saying that he emphasized that his personal belief is that peace is possible and that the time has come to make a deal. Do you believe that President Trump's assessment of the conflict is correct, and what role, if any, do you think the United States should hold in the negotiation?
Well, I think the time for a deal has come long ago. The problem is the Palestinian rejectionism. You know, if you have to sum up the history of the conflict, the diplomatic history of the conflict, not necessarily the military one. So the diplomatic history of this conflict is a series of peace deals that were proposed by different parties, sometimes by Israel itself, and were very far-reaching, very generous towards the Palestinian aspirations, and nevertheless Israel accepted every single one of them, and the Palestinians rejected every single one of them. That process unfortunately started as early as 1936 and continues as late as these days. Israeli position has consistently been that we need direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians without preconditions. Prime Minister Netanyahu said countless times that he will clear his schedule and start immediately negotiations with the Palestinians if they come to the negotiating table. Unfortunately, they opt not to come. They opt for trying to reach achievements in international fora without any concessions from their part. Well, that's not a way to achieve peace. You know that if Prime Minister Netanyahu now jumps into his car in Jerusalem, and the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, does the same in his car in Ramallah, they will meet halfway in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's the distance that separates them. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. Let's do it. That's the call of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Unfortunately, it seems there is a mechanical problem with the car of Mr. Abbas because he doesn't.
So circling back more towards with the United States, so how do you see any involvement of the United States in this and trying to get President Abbas to come to the table?
Well, yes, I think it's the United States has always been an honest broker. As a superpower, it has a responsibility, and we will welcome American involvement in facilitating negotiations. Ultimately, obviously, the deal has to be between the parties, Israel and the Palestinians. A deal that is imposed on the Palestinians will not be effective because they will renege when they can. So we have to engage into negotiations. Unfortunately, the Palestinian positions right now are those that do not allow for a substantive achievement.
And then what do you see as your ideal peace plan between the two countries?
Well, I don't know. It's very difficult to say. We are engaged in a negotiation for two-state solution for many years without any real advancement. The Prime Minister stated very clearly his position, which is very logical, and he said that he sees a solution in which we live side by side with the Palestinians recognizing Israel as a Jewish state. And because of our experience, we will need to have the security responsibility over the whole area, at least for a very long period.
And then one final question. So recently in the United States, there have been increased threats against the Jewish communities. Do you have any idea what you believe the source of this anti-Semitic violence is? Or
well, no, I'm not a sociologist of the American society, but we are very concerned by those incidents. I myself visited Rochester, New York a few days ago, where both the Jewish cemetery was desecrated and the Jewish community center was threatened. You know, for us Israelis, anti-Semitic incidents, even if they happen thousands of miles away from Israel, are local news, are domestic news. And I must admit that I didn't, American Jews very frequently come to Israel to express solidarity with Israel in difficult times. I must admit that I didn't expect, as an Israeli envoy, to have to come to Jewish communities in this country to show my Israel's solidarity with them. That is very disappointing. I believe also, that all levels of government, federal, state, and cities will do what is necessary with zero tolerance towards bigotry, towards racism, towards anti-Semitism, and put an end to these phenomena and bring to justice those persons that already committed those horrendous acts.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, I would say that for me to serve as the representative of Israel to a vast area of this country is really a very moving experience. I would say that in spite of the very cordial relations that Israel has today with many countries around the world, I think that our alliance between the United States and Israel, between the home of the free and the land of the brave, and Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim, the land of Zion and Jerusalem, to use the last words of our respective anthems, that alliance is the basic pillar of Israel in the world.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Very honored by
It will be interesting to see how the conflict continues to evolve and if President Trump will indeed be able to guide these two countries to peace and resolution. For AUTV-20, I'm Kayla Gowdy.
Thanks, Kayla. We'll be back after the break.